Welcome back to the Combat Sports Media YouTube channel. This is Cathedral San Juan Bautista in Viejo San Juan, Puerto Rico. This is the oldest church on U.S. soil. Dates back to 1521. The original structure was a wooden structure that got destroyed by a hurricane. This one dates back to 1540, I believe. According to history, official history. Of course, we don't know anything about history to be true or not, because none of us were there when any of it happened. So today we're going to talk about Danny Garcia making his debut at 154. Against Benavidez, Jose Benavidez, the older Benavidez brother that fought Crawford for the 140-pound world title. He is 6'1" or 6 foot. So he's a big guy for the weight. And Danny Garcia, despite being a former 140-pounder, he's also a pretty big guy for the weight, in my opinion, and I want to explain why. And this is a fantastic matchup. But before we get into it, let's take a little tour of the Cathedral. There's actually something very interesting and important that I want to show you guys. So you got beautiful architecture over here, much like you do in many of the European style cathedrals. This is typical Catholic style cathedral. Now, Ponce de Leon is actually buried here. It's right here. He's buried right here. For those of you that don't know, he's actually a very important person in history. According to the official narrative and official history, he was the first governor of Puerto Rico. Helped found Puerto Rico. He was an explorer, a conquistador. He actually ended up dying in Cuba. The natives in Cuba, he was attempting to do what he did over here in Cuba, establish a Spanish state over there. And he ended up dying in a scuffle from the natives in Florida, in the southern Florida region, and they tried to heal him and get him to be better, but he ended up passing away, and his body was brought back to Puerto Rico. Originally, it was buried to another nearby church, but it was transferred here. Ponce de Leon, again, first governor of Puerto Rico, helped found Puerto Rico. It was a major conquistador, explorer for the Spanish back in the day. He was actually on Christopher Columbus's first voyage to the Americas as a kid. Obviously, they went to the Dominican Republic the first voyage. Christopher Columbus went to the Dominican Republic. And then they passed through Puerto Rico. So, that I thought that was really cool, There's other figures over here that are buried, you know, some major Puerto Rican figures, but none of them come close to Ponce de Leon. And the thing is, a lot of people in Puerto Rico today have his DNA. Or maybe not a lot, but I think somewhere I read, actually, yeah, a lot, actually, about 30%. I read somewhere it was about 30% of the island has some of his DNA in their genealogy. So, definitely an important figure for not just Puerto Rico and Spanish, but history, but for everybody. This guy impacted, whether you like him or not, whether you agree with what he did or not, he was the person that impacted the world in a major way, major way. So let's get on to the Puerto Rican versus Mexican clash. Danny Garcia is about 5'9.5" in height, but the thing about him is he's very big. He's thick, he's very strong. He naturally probably walks around 180 pounds. I remember I saw him back in the day leading up to the Zab Judah fight at the press conference, and he looked like he could be fighting at 54 back then. And that's when he was at 140. He has signature wins over Amir Khan, you know, with that great left hook. That's his best weapon. Amir Khan, Lucas Matisse was another great signature win. Both these guys were viewed as the #1. Even though Matisse didn't have a title, he was looked at as the boogeyman. And Amir Khan was, of course, a unified champion when Danny knocked him out. And only had one loss on his record at that. Danny is arguably one of the best, if not the best 140-pounders over the past 10 years. You know, him and Crawford, in my opinion, are the two best junior welterweights over the past 15 years. 10 years at least. 10 years at least. Now, style-wise, he's very strong, especially with that left hook. He's not the most athletically gifted. He doesn't have the best feet. He doesn't like to use his feet, actually. He likes to stay in the same spot, and he would much rather have his opponent come to him and exchange with him, so he could counter with that big left hook and knock him the fuck out. Now, at welterweight, he didn't have the same kind of success, admittedly. He didn't have the same kind of success. But he did have success. He did win the WBC welterweight title against Robert Guerrero when it was vacant, and he tried to unify with Keith Thurman, and he lost a close, boring decision. And you know, he ended up having some solid wins over Brandon Rios, which was a great knockout. He looked fantastic against Adrian Granados, which I believe was an underrated performance because, especially before that, nobody was able to do anything with Granados. Everybody went to hell and back with Granados. And he put on a virtuoso performance against them, so that has to account for something. This is the back of the church. And this church is also the center of the Archdiocese of Puerto Rico. So this is the most important church in Puerto Rico, and obviously and one of the most important in the Western Hemisphere. This is actually the second oldest church in the Western Hemisphere, and once again, the oldest one on U.S. soil. It dates back to the 1500s. So, back to the fight. Now we have him moving up to 54, which, yeah, it is a bigger weight class, but the truth is it's not as stacked and it's not as talent filled. And here he is fighting a fellow junior welterweight, former junior welterweight in Benavidez, for his first fight at 54. Now, for Benavidez, this is not going to be his first fight at 54. I believe he fought at a similar weight once before in a previous fight in which he looked like shit from what I hear. You know, both these guys don't like to move around for different reasons. Danny has heavy feet. He likes to punch hard. He likes to be set. If you make him move and track you down, that's where he's vulnerable. With Benavidez, he was a very talented fighter, very good amateur, as both of them were, but I think Benavidez had higher expectations when he turned pro, and he ended up getting shot in the knee or some shit, and ever since then, he hasn't been the same. We saw in the Crawford fight, plenty of talent, but that injury hindered him. It was evident. No, his best win is probably over Mauricio Herrera, but the truth is, I think he lost that fight. But he did put on a great effort against Crawford. That's probably his other best performance. He seemed to be a boxer puncher before he got shot, but now he kind of just wants to stand in front of you and, you know, hit you with sharp counters and catch you in exchanges. Kind of similar to Danny in many ways, but unlike Danny, his signature punch is not the left hook, and I think Danny punches harder. See these cobblestones? They were supposedly brought here by the Spanish on the bottom floor of the boats that they were coming in, and when they came, used for balancing purposes. And when they came here and it was time to build the roads, they used those cobblestones. So these cobblestones were supposedly brought from Spain by the conquistadors 400 to 500 years ago. So, you know, both these guys are high quality operators, in my opinion, regardless of what people like to say. Especially, you know, Danny likes to get a lot of hate for some reason. Even though his resume is phenomenal. Much better than Benavidez's resume. Not that that's his fault, but it's the truth. Now, time for making the prediction. Like, you know, it's kind of easy, but obviously anything can happen. My prediction is, look, Danny's last fight was against Errol Spence, and I think he put on a good performance regarding the person he was in with. You know, Errol Spence is by far the best at 147, and it's not like anybody did better against Spence. You know, I don't think anybody did better against Spence. So that performance is kind of underrated, even though it was a loss. You know, he proved that he belongs at the top of the welterweight division, even though he clearly lost. He showed that he belonged, and he did a lot better than a lot of people do against Spence. He looks to be the fresher fighter of the two. He was never shot before. His legs are not working halfway. You know, they're working as well as they've always been. He doesn't have a problem bending his knees or any of that shit. He may not be as rangy, but I believe he's the more powerful guy. And he's also the more experienced guy, and he's the one that fought better competition. And he has accomplished way more. So I have to go with Danny Garcia. You know, the Boricua. I think he's going to pull it off. My only thing is, I hope he doesn't get outworked. But against a guy like Benavidez, I don't really worry about Danny getting outworked, which is the best way to beat Danny. Because sometimes he just likes to look for that one big shot, that big left hook counter. But there you have it, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Please press the like button and share. And see you guys soon. Peace.